Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. So the title of this video is Celebrating Your Hobby Skill Progress, and I just wanted to have a chat about identifying what you've achieved even though you may not have realised it during the years that you may have been doing a hobby. So basically what I'm trying to say is that quite often we are our own worst critics. Family and friends will say nice things about a particular figure you've painted or a model you've built, but you always kind of wave it off or say something like, I'm not that good really, you should see some of the others that can do this kind of thing. And that's basically where I was at. Always downplaying my abilities in the hobby. I think one of the reasons for that is that we've got so many YouTube channels and posts on Instagram where we can see images of far superior work or results than we or I certainly achieve. So it can creep in that you're never going to be good enough in the hobby. But recently I was digging through some stuff that was in the bureau where I used to do my hobbying, and I came across this figure, and it made me realise that perhaps unknowingly I had improved in the hobby, and this is one of the values of keeping old figures or old models so that you can see that progression. Unfortunately I don't have many. In fact I've got 3 to show you from way back when, and comparing them to more recent figure painting. So this is a witch elf. I think she was part of a game called Talisman, and I painted up the figures for this board game. I've got another one to show you, and as I think I've mentioned before, I've always been a tidy painter. You know, the blue of the skirt, if you like, isn't on the red of the cape. It's all very neat and tidy, and I've always been able to do that. But this was the standard I was at some 30 years ago. I shan't go into describing what's missing from this now. I will describe that later. So that's the first one. So I think this is another figure from that same game. Obviously it's the wood elf. Again, nice tidy work. Green where it's supposed to be, flesh tones where it's supposed to be, and all that. So even this one, as you can, this is from my old Dwarf Army, and I really do hope that Games Workshop release some of the old dwarf figures so I can get them again. This is by Throne of Power. Now the 2 previous figures were probably painted some 30 years ago, and this one about 25 years ago, no, 35 years ago. So they're quite old. But now I want to show you the figures that I've painted more recently. So you may recall this guy. This is another plastic figure for a board game. This one's for Hero Quest that's been re-released. So what's the difference between this figure and the other figures that I showed you that I painted for a board game some, as I say, 30 years ago? First thing is the flesh tone. We've got some definition of the muscles on his arms, and what I hadn't done on my figures so long ago was that there was no shading, there was no highlighting. It was just a bland skin tone. So that's one of the first things that I noticed. The other thing is, again, on the clothing, there was no definition, it was just one straight colour. So on the cloak of the witch elf it's just red, there's no highlighting or shading. On this guy we can see that the gloves have had a highlight where the light's striking the top surfaces, and there's a darker colour in the recess. The blade on the axe, there's some definition between the sharp edge and the rest of it, whereas on the other figures again there was no definition. So another figure I've done more recently, this is the one that I called Jeff. Something slightly different with this when I was trying to do non-metallic metal, so it's just greys and white to represent like a silver or a shiny steel effect. But again we can see the definition between the skin tones and the various other parts of the figure, where I've highlighted certain sections to break up the monotony of the colour and to give an idea of the reflection of light. On this figure I used a technique called wet blending, where the painted two different colours are applied on the figure, and whilst it's still wet you blend the one into the other one in order to try and get a transition. And that's something I never even attempted, you know, some 30 years ago, 35 years ago. And we learn from each other. We learn from, you know, those YouTubers that we watch, where they show these techniques in order for us to attempt them. I'll just turn around. This is the Briar Queen, I think. And the other thing is, it's not just the figure itself, it's also the base on this figure, where I took my time in order to give that some life, although it's an undead figure. So what I'm basically saying, guys, is that if you want to give yourself a bit of a boost, just look at your old stuff and look at your new stuff, and you will see the progression and the improvement that you've made. Even if you don't see an improvement, what you may find is the techniques that you used back in the day, you're much quicker at now. So even that is a development of your skill. And so you need to stop criticising yourself and try and just pat yourself on the back on occasions when you turn out a good figure and you look back and see what you used to produce. Anyway, it's Friday night, it's the start of the weekend. Thanks ever so much for watching, I do appreciate it. Look after yourselves, guys, and I'll catch up with you soon.